Welcome to Borderline Genius. We are your hosts, Kenton Grimes and Anthony Pagnato. I'm a licensed customs broker and certified customs specialist with 25 years in the industry. Anthony studied law and logistics, and here we are having a wonderful conversation, inviting you along.
Thank you for the intro, Kenton. For the people watching or listening, these are the kind of conversations that you and I, working at Mohawk Global, have had over the last 5 to 10 years. We've had a lot of fun talking as different things come up. And I don't think we've ever seen a time in global trade with as much to chew on as we see right now. So thank you to Mohawk Global for giving us the forum to share our sometimes silly, often entertaining, but usually we hope valuable insight into the world of trade compliance, and shipping around you. Kenton, I have to ask, before we get too deep into this, where did you come up with the name Borderline Genius?
I wish I had an answer to that. It was not my creation. That is all owed to our marketing team.
Oh my goodness. I thought you came up with that because you were borderline and I was genius.
Well, I'm still borderline and you're still genius.
You're borderline something. So, to start with today, obviously the topic, given the fact that it's March 12th, 2025, date of recording here, the topic is tariffs, right? The tariffs that we've seen. I would encourage everyone to go to www.mohawkglobal.com. On that, we have a special section entitled Word from the White House, where we share all the updates on tariff and trade policy that we've seen come from this presidential administration pretty regularly. We've got posts going back, starting with President Trump's America First trade policy announcement back in mid-January, going through some of the initial executive orders on tariff increases, going in through some of the delays that we saw with the implementation of Mexican and Canadian tariffs, coming all the way through the steel tariffs, and through to today and what we're seeing today. I think, Kenton, one of the things that we have been chatting about ourselves and I think is important for everybody is to take a minute to reset and understand how we got here. I mean, this is not new. Current administration, the current President Trump, has been, this is his second term in office. And so for much of this, this is a continuation of a policy that was started 12 years ago, or 8 years ago, really. It will be 12 by the end of the current administration. There's a lot that's been happening. And I think sometimes we lose track of all of the different tariffs out there. So starting with maybe 301 and the original implementation, can you walk us through, can you talk to me about the different types of tariffs? Sure. Where we are, where we started, where we are, and then we'll later talk into like where we may be going and have a little bit of conversation about what we can do to potentially work with our clients and with our partners, or what you can do on your own to help make some smart trade decisions during these times.
So, as you mentioned, the current administration, headed up by the tariff sheriff himself, began this whole ordeal on 2018-19 with the implementation of the Section 301 tariffs on Chinese goods. And the process was cumbersome. We had a standard bureaucratic process, a comment period. Everybody got a chance to petition comments. Exclusions were created, and the implementation rolled out in I want to say it was like a 3-month process. So it worked to incentivize companies to relook at their supply chain. It's the proverbial carrot or stick, and he chose the stick methodology. Whack them with tariffs to force the economic movers and shakers to look at their supply chain and contemplate bringing things back to the U.S.
And they were limited, right? In scope. I think at
Yes.
that time, if I remember back with the 301 tariffs, exclusions were the name of the game, right? Exclusions were the name of the game. And we had a pretty consistent methodology for getting exclusions from this original tariff. I think
Hmm.
on top of that, we did see and some economic pressure on U.S. companies to
Hmm.
look to nearshoring. We had probably more calls about moving manufacturing to Mexico or other areas than we've ever had. We saw a boom in production in India, in the subcontinent area. We're continuing to see booms in Southeast Asia. And so in the sense that the original 301s were meant to drive businesses to reconsider where they manufacture, specifically away from China,
Hmm.
there has been and there was an impact. Is that correct?
There was an impact. I think you're right in the sense that we saw manufacturing move outside of China. Incidentally, we also saw Chinese companies moving outside of China. So I'm not sure that the goal of the administration was fulfilled. I think there was certainly a push to reshore as much as could be done, but even in using other global resources or global partners to produce our goods, the hope was it would be Indian companies or Malaysian companies or Mexican Canadian companies. But what we found were Chinese companies opening up shop in Mexico, Chinese companies opening up shop in Singapore, in Malaysia. And so the revenue generated by those companies shipping to the US went back to China, went back to the political situations going on, the geopolitical situations. And I don't think that the 301 was effective in the overall goal. Now, switching that to the Biden administration, where he implemented the Uyghur Forced Labor Act, which wasn't a tariff act, but which forced producers in China that were using Uyghur people in forced labor camps to produce goods and just rejecting those imports into the US, that was a strong that was a strong pull to move production out of those areas and outside of those people groups being abused. Now, unlike the Uyghur forced labor, this president Trump's second term, the tariff sheriff himself has gotten a little more sophisticated in utilizing the IEPA, the International Emergency Economic Powers Act. He has taken a policy that came into fruition in 1977 under Carter and modified his approach. This approach has sped up the implementation of tariffs. Unlike the Section 301, where we had a very bureaucratic process, this methodology allows him to really orchestrate the tariffs without the loopholes. We talked about exemptions and exceptions that were in play under Section 301, and then the U.S. trade laws, such as utilizing foreign trade zones or duty drawback, allowed importers to take these inputs, use them, and then if they were sending goods out of the country, return back to them the tariffs that were applied. Now, under the IEPA, these tariffs are not eligible for drawback. And if you bring these goods into a foreign trade zone, they're foreign privileged, meaning at that time the tariff rate applies. So if they manufacture something and export it, they still have to pay that tariff on the foreign goods that were subject to IEPA. So it's a little he's more sophisticated and he's definitely generating revenue to the federal government this way. There are very few loopholes.
The 301s aren't gone. And in
The
fact,
301s are
the
not gone.
301s on China are stronger as I understand it.
Hmm.
The exemptions that many of us or the exceptions that many of us have used are gone.
Nearly, yeah. At the end of May, I think May is when the last round of exceptions come up for review, and I'm not hearing anything positive about seeing those renewed.
Okay, so we've got Right now, we've got Section 301
Mm-hmm.
that's been in place for 8 years, going on 9, right? We've
Mm-hmm.
got the IEPA, which
Mm-hmm.
you've gone through, and those apply not just to Chinese goods, but also Canada, Mexico, and
Mm-hmm.
frankly anywhere else the president decides or the administration decides that they want to put those tariffs in place. We also have a really big area called Section 232. Can you talk a little bit about Section 232?
Section 232. This one is it's a fungus that is spreading. So the initial 232 again came in under the tariff sheriff's first term, and it was on steel and aluminum. It initially included the derivatives, but after review, they stuck with the standard roll, sheets, bar stock,
So raw metal product.
raw metal, right?
Aluminum,
And
steel, raw materials
raw
used,
material
something that our mills could have made in the
would
past, or
produce.
we maybe
Mhm.
when we want to manufacture our own steel, but pretty much a raw material good.
Raw material good. And there were exemptions and exclusions also tied to the 232 originally under the first term. Those proceeded up until February when the announcement came that 232 derivatives, so products containing steel or aluminum. Um, One of my favorites that I've been working on right now is outdoor equipment,
Sure.
sporting goods, fishing reels, and things like that. So those contain the smallest little bits of aluminum or steel, whether it's the ring eyelets on the rod or the fishing reel handle on the reel. So those things are now included into this tariff. So they are going to be seeing 25% on the value of the material, the value of the aluminum or steel in those
So our
products.
importers of these sporting goods, let's say it was a fishing reel, let's say it
Mm-hmm.
was a piece of furniture, have to know the component value of the steel or aluminum inside of their overall product that they're bringing in, which as an outdoorsman, avid outdoorsman, scares me a little
Mm-hmm.
bit, as we've seen over the years, fishing reels. Quality maybe change and have less and less and less metal parts inside of them, and
Yeah.
I know I've got some plastic gears and some of my reels at home. We might see even fewer. That could be an unintended consequences. Fewer steel or aluminum parts going forward. But that brings a complexity out, right? For importers, they have to understand and be able to articulate on their paperwork the value of the components, right? So now, if I'm an importer of a chair from
Mm-hmm.
China, and my chair's got cotton in it, and
Mm-hmm.
my chair has steel reinforcement in it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm now looking at having to deal with regimes under Section 301,
Yep.
right?
IEPA.
IEPA tariffs. So we got 25. We got another 25 with IEPA,
Mm-hmm.
right? We've got Section 232,
Yep.
right? Tariffs on the value of the steel component of my
Mm-hmm.
chair. And potentially, or not potentially, I have to absolutely make sure that that cotton in my chair, cotton being a major
Mm-hmm.
commodity from the autonomous the Uyghur area
Mm-hmm.
of China, I have to make sure that I've tracked that to make sure that that's
Mm-hmm.
coming from sources that aren't precluded from being imported to the United States. So that's a lot to do.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
And if
we
there's
know
some
that
wood
there's a
in it, you've got
cost.
Lacey Act.
Absolutely. You got Lacey Act for wood. We know that that's a lot to do, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so as we talk to clients, I've talked to an enormous number of clients out there, and I think that there's both a concern about the overall cost, right, of the new tariffs and the increasing tariffs and the shifting of tariffs, right? Obviously, we went from free trade with Canada and Mexico, a long period of free trade,
Mm-hmm.
to a pretty intense conversation with our friends to the north, specifically Mexico. It seems to be a little calmer, right now. They're
A little bit.
but still, definitely the threat of substantial tariffs on what has always been a free trade area. Um, and then looking forward, there are other areas that are coming up for in conversation outside of just the, I chuckled the other day because uh, the Canadian leadership had put a tax on electricity, so
Hmm.
the president and the current administration juiced the tariff on Canadian imports from 25% to 50%.
Hmm.
And then that electricity tax was removed, and the tax was taken down back to 25%. And so this is an ever evolving situation, even just within the
Hmm.
232, the IEPA, and the 301s like you've discussed. But there are other tariffs
Well,
absolutely positively coming down the road.
we've already seen announcements on 232 on copper, much like the
Yeah.
steel and aluminum. So we're going to see that. And then there was an announcement, I think it was today or late yesterday, on lumber, timber, and derivatives, as well as no, those are the two: copper, lumber, timber, and derivatives. So paper, anything that's milled out of I mean, during COVID, we ran out of toilet paper, even though it was domestic. But now we may actually have a toilet paper problem because a lot of the lumber that is used to create it is coming from Canada. So we may have a 232 problem that, the next time you run to Costco or Sam's Club, you're going to want to pick up the biggest package of TP you can get.
Or bidets. They tell me that the Americans need to convert to bidets. I don't know about that.
You could do that. I haven't jumped on that bandwagon yet.
Me neither. Me neither. Although you read about it constantly. Um,
Although the
we
copper plumbing
also
might be a problem.
copper plumbing. Yeah, it's all plastic fittings from now on.
Yeah.
So talk to me a little bit about the other big area, the reciprocal tariffs.
So the reciprocal tariffs is the shadow lurking, right? We know about the 232s. We know what's been announced. What we know about reciprocal tariffs really is what was announced on the State of the Union address, that not on April Fool's Day, because he made a point. He did not want to look like a fool or make it seem like it was a joke. So on April 2nd, there is to be an announcement on reciprocal tariffs, which I've poked fun calling him the tariff sheriff and such, but I think it's probably the most moderate approach and systemic approach we've seen from the new arising of a tariff regime, where we look at the country we trade with, and if our tariffs are misaligned, we're going to realign them, whether it is us increasing or creating a bilateral agreement to bring them at a level place. So that is what we are looking to see. We've got a kind of a test case with India. We know Prime Minister Modi has been here. We know that there's been some discussions. Since his visit to the US, we've also seen that he's reignited the communication and trade negotiations with the EU. I don't know what that's supposed to mean. I don't know if it means that the trade discussions here in the US went poorly, or maybe it went so well that he's trying to bring a third party in. I don't have any inside information. No, nobody's hitting me up on the celly and letting me know what's going on,
I,
sadly.
I have inside information.
Oh, great.
I have inside information, and that's that Borderline Genius will be doing a whole episode on reciprocal tariffs and an upcoming episode. There's a lot there. There's a lot to uncover. There's a lot of
Mhm.
potential impact. But for this episode, I think it's important to call out that's out there and coming. And then the whole other kind of tariffs, which we don't need to dive deep into again today, which are the retaliatory tariffs, right?
Mhm.
You and I got a chuckle this morning that on the EU's list of tariff retaliatory tariffs, the seventh ranked by value item that they are. So it's the number one on that list at almost €1 billion of imported value was what was it, Ken?
Was it
Um,
whiskey?
yeah, it
Bourbon?
was whiskey, right? It was whiskey. And we're seeing these continue to see these targeted attacks, right? Kentucky, Tennessee, right? They're trying to hit pro-Trump areas. We saw this during the
Hmm.
first administration as well. Um, the number seven item on there at over, I think, 350 million euros were playing cards.
Hmm.
And that shocked us both. Apparently, we make a lot of playing cards, and it's coming out of Kentucky. So Mitch
Yeah,
McConnell, another area that has supported Trump, President Trump, and such. We're seeing some retaliation. But at the end of the day, we'll have a whole nother Borderline Genius show on retaliatory tariffs and what we can expect for that. So to
I
kind of
think in
wind
that
this back, go ahead, Ken.
I think in that show we should be, together and doing like a fencing thing where you swipe at me and I get to whack you on the head. That would be fun.
Fencing is probably an area that I'm going to lose, but or maybe, and I dare not say this. I'm careful to say this here. You know, and I will make a comment here. You've called the current administration, you've called President Trump the tariff sheriff. We say that with love.
Hmm.
You know, he is, no matter what side of the political aisle you're on, he is using tariffs to enforce policy, which
Hmm.
is a sheriff like activity, and
Hmm.
it's got a good ring to it, right?
Sounds
Uh,
good.
yeah. So on that note, I'm going to say, and again, trying to stay apolitical here, but I don't believe, just like if we were to fence,
Hmm.
nobody wins that, and nobody wins a trade war. I think it's going to be an interesting time for all of our countries as we kind of uh, recycle or get back into this new norm, which, by the way, feels like the 35th new norm of the last 10 years. So.
We just keep bouncing from black swan event to black swan event,
Yeah.
right? It's
So,
who
um,
knew the black swans were reproducing at such a rate.
oh my goodness. Man, I thought it were black cats we had to watch out for. Um, let's talk a little bit about, as we end here, we've kind of talked
Mhm.
through at very basic levels, 301s, 232s,
Mhm.
derivatives. We've talked about the IEPA. There's a lot going on. It will continue to
Mhm.
change. Again, you will see in the description of this podcast a link to mohawkglobal.com and a link to mohawkglobal.com, our word from the White House, right, where we really just try to keep track of all of our writings on tariffs specifically. Um, as we kind of head through that, I'd like to kind of end with your thoughts on what you're hearing as you're out talking to importers. And, as a licensed broker,
Mhm.
Kenton, and somebody that I respect for being beyond reproach when it comes to doing things the right way, which is critical here. I think I'd like to hear what the biggest concerns are you're hearing from clients. Is it the complexity? Is it the cost? Is it both? And what your recommendations are
Mhm.
for continuing to move forward and thrive as an importer in 2025, 2026, and beyond.
I'm hearing quite a few messages. Some of them are the simple pleading, "Help me. I don't know where to start."
Right.
And I think depending on the sophistication of the importer, that's often a very candid and humble request. Now, the answer to "help me, I don't know where to figure it out" isn't something that you can just box up and deliver. It really requires being engaged with a quality trade professional, whether it's your customs broker, whether you're working with a trade attorney or a trade advisory firm, someone that is listening to what is going on, but also what is impacting your organization. Some companies are simply concerned with the financial impact. So the request is, how do I mitigate my risk, my financial risk? I don't know that, in the early stages, the Section 301, there was a rush to duty drawback and a rush to FTZs because those were mechanisms. At minimum, the FTZ allowed you to defer payment even if you weren't ever exporting the goods. You could at least defer payment until you sold them commercially in the US. Now, that tool may still work from a deferment standpoint, but it doesn't work for a duty resolution standpoint on outbound goods. You're still paying the IEPA, as we mentioned earlier, and being able to talk through those options. We have a great product here, Mohawk Global Trade Advisors, and some clients have come to us and said, "I need you to assist me. I don't, I'm a normal human being. I only have two hands. I can only do so much. I need an extra set of hands or two." And so they reach out to us to be that extra set of hands. The difficult part is being a jack of all trades. You can't, as a trade professional, you can't possibly be an expert at all things. FTZ, the minutia in there is so great. You can't expect somebody who is really focused and excellent at FTZ operations and FTZ implementations to be your classification or your CT-PAT or all the different buckets. Even customs has specialists in certain areas. They don't have, if you're a customs person working for customs, you're not spread across all of the tariff codes or all of the different free trade agreements. You focus in on one or on one item. So partnering with someone who offers trade advisory services, you get, instead of hiring somebody in the market space that is good and talented, but limited in their breadth of knowledge, you get to hire an organization that has multiple people specializing in multiple areas, giving you the same, that kind of value. So
I
those are
think that's
those are
great advice, Ken. I think so. So off the bat, making sure, and we're gonna plug Mohawk Global and Mohawk Global Trade
sure.
Advisors, right? We are a world-class customs broker with many licensed brokers on staff, and we have a consulting arm that is world-class as well. There has never been a better time to make sure you are aligned with, open with, and communicating with an expert in the field. So that's
Yep.
that's one area straight off the bat for sure.
Yeah. Another area is, again, as far as customs brokers go, find one that's going to help you. I mean, we're not all the same. I've had customers tell me, "Well, don't you all just give me the same 7501?" Well, the form is the same, but that's not created by the broker. Your experience, much like any airline, is dictated by the flight staff and the people that you're working with and interpersonally. So I think having someone that you're comfortable with to be candid about the issues that exist so that the conversations can happen and you can create um, dialogues or you can create mapways to resolution. That's key.
Yeah. I think from my point of view, and you're definitely a brokerage trade policy guy a little bit more than me, although you're extremely bright within the realm of ocean and air freight. I've always been more of a freight guy, right?
Mhm.
For me, there continues to be just an overwhelming call for diversification and building resilient supply chains, right?
Mhm.
We joked about this being the 50th new normal that we faced in the last 10 years. And as part of that, there's a constant reminder that sourcing from one country, right, where there's options to source from multiple
Mhm.
countries, or always choosing the lowest cost, lowest landed cost transportation mode are more likely to end up in disruptions and more likely to make things challenging when things like this do hit, right? So we've seen some very successful clients, especially after COVID, Kenton. I saw some really smart clients make some really intelligent supply chain sustainability and resiliency moves that actually built some extra cost in their supply chain, but lowered their overall risk. And as the COVID pandemic,
Mhm.
rate apocalypse came down, right, we saw many of those companies abandon some of those strategies to again go after lowest cost freight, lowest landed cost of the parts that they're bringing in and items that they're bringing in. And I think that this is just another reminder that a resilient supply chain includes near sourcing, right? Near shoring,
Mhm.
domestic sourcing, right? Sourcing from multiple overseas countries, and having the flexibility to move autonomously between them when you can. And not everybody's capable of that. I
Mhm.
understand that. There are certain industries, certain products that are certainly made in one place and one place only.
Mhm.
But for those organizations that have the ability to diversify geographically, this is just another reminder of the importance.
Oh yeah, I mean, no company exists today that has their internet provider in one way. I mean, you don't, the last thing you want is somebody to hit the pole out there, knock out your one input to the internet access, right? So you've probably got Cat 5s, you've got fiber, there's backups as an enterprise. And I think it just stands to reason if if you're willing to spend that extra to ensure the operation continues to meet its goals, your supply chain has to operate similarly. It does no good to have the cheapest product that can't get in here because of disruption in the supply chain. So no,
And you
diversification
said
is
it, you
huge.
said it perfect. At the end of the day, our goal is to make sure your product is on store shelves so that your customers can buy it, no matter
Yeah.
where you procure it from. All right.
Hmm.
And we're happy to support. We can do a lot of consulting, we can do a lot of work. And it's important to have a provider like Mohawk Global who's going to take the time to get deep with you and
Hmm.
understand your business. I think it's about time for us to start rounding off here. Are there any major topics that you've missed that we've missed?
I don't think we've missed anything major. Again, want to plug, hit that website up. That is a good place to start to hear what is going on. We're constantly posting, keeping it updated, and it'll give you a place to begin your internal company's dialogue.
So we'll have a link below to
Hmm.
our website, to our Word from the White House section. We're also going to have a link below to the Contact Us, and you can feel free to drop in the area Borderline Genius or Kenton Grimes as somebody you want to talk to, and we'll reach out and connect with you and see how we can help you as we move through 2025 and what is hopefully a very successful year. I want to thank everybody for taking the time to listen to us here on Borderline Genius. I'm going to do something that I've heard everybody do. I don't know if this is real, but I'm going to say it anyway. Please hit like and subscribe, right? Is that a thing? Like I'm going
I
to
think
say it.
so.
I'm going to say it. It's done. And with that, we'll take it out, and we'll see everybody next time as we take a deeper dive into some of these upcoming issues, like reciprocal tariffs, retaliatory tariffs, and even break into other things like ocean transportation, air freight, and all the things that you need to talk about and you need to know about to make your transportation strategy successful. Thanks.